I'm Glenn McGinnis, and this is Outburst. On the program, has the Omicron variant made you less optimistic about the future?
The first time I felt hopeful in a long time.
Not really. I mean, this is the way these things go.
It was like, oh my gosh, here we go again.
These things will come, and these too shall pass.
But first, when the Omicron variant came on the radar back in November, the first instinct was to get ahead of this, either by encouraging Canadians to get their booster shots or reminding Canadians who have not been vaccinated yet to get their shots. Restrictions were also reinstated in different parts of the country, which put further strain on businesses. So we took to the streets to ask Canadians what, if anything, could be done to bring these numbers down and once again flatten the curve. Our question: is enough being done to mitigate the Omicron variant?
Well, I'm of the belief that governments can't mitigate all risks in our personal lives. I think enough is being done. We're wearing the masks, we've got a high vaccination percentage. I don't think we need any more extreme measures at this point, but I think they're doing a pretty good job of controlling the risks right now.
I think it's not finished. From what I say, it's because people, they don't respect, put the mask and clean the hand and take the distance, And I think if everyone continue to respect for, again, one more year, we can finish with this thing,
I think it's notable that the world is talking about Quebec. I think the CNN poll that in the United States, and we know what's happening in the United States, that 81.5% of the pollsters, the ones answering the poll in the United States, agreed with the tax. So the fact that they stand alone and that others are talking about it means that it's lacking leadership and not enough is being done.
Yes. I mean, what can we do? Come on. I had it. I'm out now. Thank goodness I'm okay. But what else can be done? People need to be vigilant. It's really hard to, say what more can be done. We have only so many limited resources to work with, and people just need to be positive,
I have sympathy for those in charge of rules of law surrounding this recent outbreak. However, I think there's a lot of lack of attention on mental health because of lockdowns.
I would hate to be the person making those decisions, so I'm going to have to say I think they're doing the best they can with the information they have.
I believe so. I think there just needs to be further education and facts. I think a lot of people have the fatigue from the pandemic, and people are just not well informed, or they just don't have the time to listen, or there's lack of trust because of mixed messaging.
I don't think so. The school system and also, all the shopping centers, I think, are a huge part of the propagation of the virus, and I don't think that they've done enough to mitigate the virus.
It's going to happen any way you look at it. You wonder, you think back and say, well, where did that person get it? How did it happen? It's going to happen. Are they doing enough? Everybody's had it, so they're doing as much as I think people are going to tolerate. If they start doing more, people are going to lose their businesses. It's going to be too much. So are they doing enough? They're doing enough as we can handle, I think.
I mean, yeah, I think it was a good idea to go in that lockdown initially, especially when it seemed like everybody was getting it over that Christmas holiday period. But at the same time, I think at this point, everyone who I know had it. It was a little cold. I think we just need to kind of move on with our lives and just adjust to this being the new norm.
Look, I think a public health crisis like Omicron is difficult for any government to handle. There's any number of people who are going to be frustrated with the current status quo. But at the same time, I think enough and as much as we could expect is being done, given the fact that this is an incredibly difficult thing to monitor and manage for anybody, government or otherwise. So as a father of a young one who's constantly being kept at home because the strain has affected childcare and otherwise, it's very frustrating, and I know that I'm not alone in that. But we also recognize that there's little we can do, and that public health directives are public health directives. I think we can all follow and just hope for the best.
I think so, yes. I think we're ahead of other countries and behind some other countries, so I think we're right in the right place. So when I see what the States are doing and what some places in Europe are doing, I think we're in a good place.
I think so. There's only so much you can do. In my opinion, we're continuing to do things to mitigate the variant as much as we can, but life still has to go on.
I think it's just got to run through. I truly believe in the super immunity that people would get from it, and even people unvaxxed. And I wish we would start following people that have had the virus, which I think is just as important as getting vaccinated, or more important.
No. We should have listened to Dr. Tam in the first place, and other countries should have listened to their medical people, and the medical people should not be tied at the hip to politicians. That's what I feel.
I don't think that a lot needs to be done about it, and I know that there's a lot of opposition to that opinion, but I think that we should just let it take its natural course. I think that it's time to take off the masks, to release the store owners from having to enforce the government's mandates, and I think we should let the market resume.
You know, I feel that government leaders are, you know, thoughtful and, you know, individuals that want nothing but the best for society at large. I really do mean that. Irrespective of politician, they're caring individuals. That's what motivates them in the first place. So I feel, yes, of course, they're doing their best. Yep.
I don't know how much more you can do. I think, I think the government, the people, everybody's done what they can. I don't know if there's much more we can do. It's just the way it is.
Restrictions on small businesses, the added weight of inflation, prices going up, interest rates inevitably climbing, and many Canadians still struggling to make ends meet could add up to a gloomy forecast for Canada's economy in the foreseeable future. We sent our cameras out to ask Canadians if they have faith in our country's finances moving forward. Our question:
how optimistic are you about the Canadian economy?
I feel pretty good about it. I'd like to see our government doing a little more work on inflation, but then our friends in the States are having a worse problem than we are. Their inflation rate's much higher than ours, so I think we just have to go with the flow. The problem with the pandemic and the chain of supply and everything, it's just the way it is.
Yeah, the economy's in terrible shape. And if everybody got vaccinated, maybe it would help bring the economy back.
I have to be optimistic. I can't imagine that the government would let anything go too desperate. So I have to remain, otherwise you're always in a panic. So I have to remain optimistic.
Let's say I think this is a tough time for almost any state to deal with, the post-COVID kind of crunch and everything else. Right now I can only hope that restrictions slowly ease and that life goes back to whatever the new normal is and potentially economic growth follows. But let's say hopefully optimistic, but not definitively so.
Right now, I'm not really optimistic. I actually got a business myself, and I was hit pretty hard by the pandemic, and also with the little stock crash in the last few weeks. I'm not too optimistic for the next few months, but I'm sure that in the next few years we'll be able to recover from it.
I'm positive that in general it will recover. I'm not sure that Alberta, in the way it handles things, is going to do as well as they could, since they seem to be focused on one economy or one industry. But if they get their head out, maybe they'll look around and see that there are other things that can be explored.
You know what? I think it'll all come back together. I think it's a very resilient economy, and I think the pandemic has shown that people look for alternative and try to make things work and look for the best that they can do, and I think it'll really help the economy.
Not very. Right now, like my husband and I, we both have really good paying jobs and all that kind of stuff, and we're looking at like owning a home at some point, but it's just very discouraging to see prices of everything. And when I first started driving, like gas prices were under $1, and now it hasn't been under $1 since like that first year I started driving. So it's just like everything seems to like keep building, and like despite having well-paying jobs, it's still sometimes like can't really go on trips and stuff because it's just so expensive for everything.
I think our economy has lots of potential. I think the oil industry has taken a huge hit here in Alberta, and there's a lot of room for improvement.
Not great. When you're printing money, you just end up with problems. It's happened before, and people start using it for wallpaper.
I'm optimistic. These things go in cycles. It's as bad now as it's been since the Reagan era in the early 80s. I'm old enough to remember that. I'm old enough to remember 12% interest at banks. It goes in cycles. I'm optimistic because of what economists are saying about what's going to be happening towards the end of the year, and that's a gradual turnaround. So bite the bullet, learn to adjust, and very, very sorry for empty shelves and expensive items. We're all paying it. We all don't want to pay it, but it's going to turn around.
I am optimistic about the Canadian economy because there's a lot of talk of, the economy is taking a big hit, but there's also parts of the economy that are thriving off of this. Whether that is a positive or a negative, I couldn't even begin to explain. But I think in the long run, we're going to be all right.
Oh, we'll bounce back. I believe in that. We have good people, we have good business opportunities, and I think we will go right back to where we were. I really do believe in it, and I hope people will just have that faith as well and try not to get too pessimistic.
Oh, wow, now that's definitely not good. We got a lot of inflation right now. The inflation is more than likely going to continue. The buying power of everybody is, going down, and the prices of living are going up. So that's probably not going to change, and I don't think that the federal government really cares about that. I think they care about a few corporations that, are their biggest supporters. They don't really care about the lower middle class.
Well, unless things change, I'm really not, because we're, with the shutdowns, having to support small businesses, having to give people that, are being laid off money, there's a lot of people out there right now that are struggling, that need help. So no, I'm not confident about the economy at all right now until we get this under control and people start acting responsible.
I'm not the most optimistic about it, but I vote, and that's all you can really do, and just hope for the best. And I think it will turn around eventually. I think we'll come out of this.
In 1926, a constitutional crisis known as the King-Byng Affair pitted a prime minister against which high-ranking official? Premier of Ontario, opposition leader, or Governor General?
I'd have to go to the Governor General based upon the question, but I got no idea.
Premier of Ontario. Governor General.
Governor General.
Opposition leader. Okay, I'll say Premier of Ontario, the first one then.
I'll say Governor General.
Absolutely correct. Very good. Bye.
The year 1926 brought a conflict over constitutional authority like no other experienced before or since in Canada. It saw a prime minister go head-to-head with a governor general, and it was known as the King-Byng Affair. That year, Prime Minister Mackenzie King wanted to call a snap election to spare his minority government from embarrassment due to a scandal involving federal customs and excise during Prohibition. He asked for Parliament to be dissolved. But Lord Byng, Canada's Governor General at the time, said no. Instead, in June of 1926, Byng invited the opposition Conservatives, led by Arthur Meighen, to form a government. But it was not long before Meighen's minority government was forced to call an election themselves, and during the campaign, King's Liberals would accuse the Governor General of meddling in Canadian politics. The public agreed for the most part, and Mackenzie King was elected Prime Minister once again in September. Following the King-Byng Affair, Canadian Governors General would always accept the advice of a sitting Prime Minister.
The issue of one's right to refuse a vaccination if they don't want one has become a hot-button issue in this country. The trucker protests here in Ottawa, of course, have been all about that. The recent decision by the Quebec government to impose a tax on those who are not vaccinated has resulted in some people crying foul. The Quebec government has since backed away from that plan. But are measures like these the wrong approach, or should we do what it takes? Our question.
Should there be a penalty for people who refuse to be vaccinated?
I don't think so. Like my husband said as well, there's already a lot of penalties for people who are choosing not to get vaccinated right now, and not being able to do the things they want to, not being able to get jobs, but then also like they risk the chance of getting more sick if they catch COVID-19, and that's their choice. And I'm sure people are well enough aware of that with all the conversations that have been happening.
I think there already is. I think there's already limitations on what they can do. And I know some works are, some people's jobs, if they aren't vaccinated, they can't work there. So I think that's penalty enough.
Getting other people sick and making them die, if possibly, it's the same as driving badly. I think behaving badly is not a good thing.
Well, I'm curious as to how effective it will be. So I'm looking at what's happening in Quebec and taxing people that are not, refusing to get vaccination. There's an inordinate cost to not refusing to vaccinate that perhaps they should share in the burden.
So I think in some cases people don't have the option, or they're concerned about their own personal health. I personally don't think it should go as far as giving people penalties for that decision.
It's an individual thing. You have to respect people. You may not agree with them, but we live in a free democracy, and we should, millions of people have died so that we can live in a free democracy. And there's lots of countries in the world where if you feel like you need to be bossed around, you can just move there and they'll be glad to have you, But I prefer living in a democracy myself.
I don't think it's fair that people should be penalized for staying true to themselves, but I think just educating yourself and really understanding both ends of the spectrum is really important.
I think you really just have to respect the person's choice at the end of the day, whether they want to put something into their own body or not. As long as the information is there, I don't personally agree with penalizing someone financially for not wanting to put the vaccine in their body. I don't agree with that, no.
This whole vaccination doesn't do anything because vaccinated people still spread it. And they get it. So what's the difference between not being vaccinated and vaccinated?
I don't think there should be a penalty for people who refuse to be vaccinated. I just think it's kind of a slippery slope. I don't know if you start taxing all bad behavior that could result in health risks, such as, smoking cigarettes or other things such as this. So I definitely don't agree with it. I think we just kind of have to get through the pandemic together, respect other people's medical choices, and focus on moving forward.
No, I don't think so. They already are in a way, because when they mandate vaccines for going to restaurants or travel or things like that. So I think that's probably enough, but to punish people in other ways, like financially, I think that's a bit harsh.
I don't think so. I think at this point we did the whole vaccine passport, but then we had to go back and lock down again, so it kind of showed that it didn't really do anything. The people who chose not to get vaccinated are doing it to themselves. They are going to get sicker, but I don't think it should change the way that they're able to live their lives.
I guess we have to decide whether it's worth, the social costs that would be incurred by, having additional penalties, but yes, I think we should consider having some penalties, yes.
I just wonder where that would end, like if the government's able to force people to do something like that when it's their own body. I don't know where the end would be for that.
Let's put it this way. Public health is not about me or you, but it's about all of us. And those who choose to be irresponsible with their own decisions can do so. But I do think the duty or responsibility of the government to extend their extra reach to those who choose not to do what's in the best interests of their community, I think it's a judgment call. And I am less sympathetic to those who choose not to do everything they can to help us through the worst of this crisis.
I think there are other ways about going about doing that. Again, it's still education. I have issues with the conspiracists because it's really not from facts. I understand vaccine hesitancy, but there has to be a better way to convince people to think about the larger community and not these sort of conspiracies of the vaccine, the government, and what it may lead to.
No. Everybody to each your own, and they're already penalized enough. There's certain places where they will not be able to go. That's pretty much enough.
Yeah, give them a fine, make them pay. Why not? It's a ticket. It's a simple ticket. If you're not going to get vaccinated and you're not going to help this country get back to normal so that I can take this off, why not get vaccinated? And if you don't, get a fine. Every 3 months, a $300 fine, $100 a month. That gives you lots of time to go and get one.
With many of us once again not being able to see family and friends due to this Omicron wave, it can be hard to keep a positive attitude, especially in the dead of winter. Although it may not feel like it yet in different parts of the country, spring is on the way, and with that, perhaps a renewed hope that we can get back to living our lives the way we want to. So, are you hopeless or hopeful about things getting better? Our question.
Has the Omicron surge made you less optimistic about the future?
It's changing my attitude towards people. I didn't realize that there were such extremes within the population. Regarding the economy, no. What's happening here is supply chain issues. I don't get the mass resignation. The economists are calling it the Great Resignation, equivalent to the Great Depression. There are things that I don't understand. There are things that I resent, but we're going to come through it. We're going to come through it.
I think in a way it's made me more optimistic, where you see the hospitalizations are down. And I think everyone is just becoming more and more aware of COVID-19 and the coronavirus in general. And honestly, I think everyone's response to this wave has been the best, I think. We were able to keep some things going. We didn't do a full shutdown. So I'm cautiously optimistic that we're slowly figuring a way to navigate through this.
It's interesting. I find Omicron is the first time I've felt hopeful in a long time. Not to minimize it in any way, but I'm very hopeful that more people will catch it and not be severely affected, and then hopefully they don't have to worry about it for a little while. And then that in itself will give people hope. Okay, I can survive this for the most part. I'm very sensitive to vulnerable populations. However, I just think that this is one that the majority of the population can catch and hopefully get through it unscathed.
I mean, I see on TV people not wearing masks. You know, a lot of people aren't getting their vaccine. It's just, if you don't take it serious, how are we ever going to get under control?
I think the Omicron surge has made me more optimistic. I think we're seeing a reduction of the severity of the disease itself, and I think the light at the end of the tunnel is kind of near, and I think everyone's going to kind of get this illness, and it's going to become a regular virus that's just in rotation. But we'll see how it plays out.
I guess it's going to be like the flu. You just have to be more vigilant, more careful, and simple things. Wash your hands. I know after all this is done, I may still wear my mask indoors.
Not really. I mean, this is the way these things go. I mean, Delta did the same thing. Omicron, unless, Omicron doesn't put most people in the hospital or get them deathly ill, unless, of course, they're immunocompromised and aren't vaccinated. And, the big thing that they're talking about is they're saying, well, we were told if we got the vaccines, we wouldn't get the virus. No, that's not really it. The thing is, if we get the virus, it helps our body fight Omicron. And I think just eventually, as we're starting to see, and are starting to see it in the world, that the Omicron is starting to go down. So I think everybody just has to be diligent, be patient and do their best to wear a mask and do what they have to do?
No, I just think it's the way we manage it. It should be part of a fact. Like you see other European countries like Ireland, England going towards living with the pandemic, living with these kind of surges, instead of these complete closures, on how to just work within a situation, because it's never going to end. There's always going to be some sort of variant that comes forward.
That in the short term, yes, we're going to still be suffering the effects of this Omicron variant for many months. But after a year or two, I think we'll be back in where we were prior to the pandemic.
It's just one of those things. It was like, oh my gosh, here we go again. Is it ever going to be over? It's what at that point now we're just like, I don't even know what to expect of the future. It's so here and there. Hopefully that was the last little negative bit of it and we can just move on.
At the moment, yeah. I mean, it's no fun walking around like this. I want to get it over with. I'm sure everybody does. But if people are still getting sick and they're still ending up in the hospital, it's because they're not vaccinated. So, the future doesn't look too bright at the moment. Hopefully it'll come to an end soon.
I think it's interesting. I think I'm optimistic, I'm an optimistic person in general. So because of that, I think it helps me. But definitely not short term.
People who have come around to other ways of doing things because the traditional way has not been available, I think that's been very positive. And I think there's been a lot of innovations during the pandemic, people doing things differently. And I think that it's time to just put our focus in another direction and maybe dial down on the fear a little bit.
Even through the Omicron, so many times I've said it's going to be over, and I'm the optimistic guy, so I've still got a lot of optimism left in me.
Well, it makes you rethink the future. It almost, which I hope most of us have done, is taken the time to really do a restart on our own plans and see, hey, what could I do better? Should I change the way I'm doing things, or just a different way of looking at things and maybe plan something different.
COVID has been a way of nature saying, go to your room. You don't know how to take care of the world and the planet, which is our Mother Earth.
No. I think these things will come, and these too shall pass.
Thanks for watching this episode of Outburst on CPAC. If you have any comments about this show or any other show, you can find us on social media. You can also find us on our website at www.cpac.ca. I'm Glenn McGuinness, and on behalf of my colleagues at the Cable Public Affairs Channel, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.